you can call me RJ, or you can call me RJJ, or you can call me RJJ Jr.
They lit up the screen in bell-bottoms and feathered hair, defining a decade with their charm, talent, and unforgettable faces.
Hey, Carla, up your nose with rubber hose.
But time has a way of dimming even the brightest lights. Some left quietly, others faded so far from the spotlight, the world barely noticed when they were gone.
Hollywood star Cindy Williams died yesterday at the age of 75. In 2001, she was in Saskatoon as the celebrity guest at the Silver Spoon dinner.
Brace yourself for the haunting truth behind the 70s, stars who died and no one noticed. The Queen of Disco didn't just rule the dance floors, she revolutionized them. In 1975, Giorgio Moroder and Donna Summer created something that would change pop music forever. A sensual, pulsating track called Love to Love You Baby. It was bedroom soul meets electronic innovation, and it became the blueprint for an entire decade of dance music. From there, Summer became unstoppable. I Feel Love, Last Dance, Bad Girls, Hot Stuff. Each one a masterclass in vocal power and production genius. She wasn't just a disco queen, she was a chameleon who pivoted to pop and soft rock in the 1980s without missing a beat. She Works Hard for the Money became an anthem. But on May 17, 2012, the world lost her to a rare form of lung cancer. She was 63. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted her 7 months after her death, a bittersweet honor for an artist who had already cemented her legacy in the grooves of a generation's most iconic songs. American Graffiti made Cindy Williams a star. George Lucas's nostalgic 1973 blockbuster launched her into the stratosphere, and she followed it up with Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation. She was riding the new Hollywood wave, the golden age of cinema. Then came Happy Days and Lavin and Shirley, where she played Shirley Feeney for 158 episodes of what became TV's most watched show in the 1977-78 season. She was everywhere, in everything, the face of a generation's entertainment. But fame is fleeting. After leaving Lavin and Shirley in 1982, Williams worked steadily for 4 decades in television sitcoms, never quite recapturing that initial lightning. On January 25, 2023, after a short illness, she died in Los Angeles. She was 75. The woman who had been inescapable in the 1970s passed away with barely a ripple in the cultural conversation. When Norman Lear needed someone to play opposite Archie Bunker's bigotry, he found Sherman Hemsley performing in a Broadway production of Pearlie. What Lear discovered was gold. Hemsley's George Jefferson wasn't just a character, he was a revolution. The man who went from working as a mail clerk in Philadelphia to becoming one of television's most beloved figures brought dignity, wit, and undeniable charisma to a role that could have been a caricature. The Jeffersons ran for a decade, and Hemsley's verbal sparring with his family became the stuff of television legend. He was so magnetic that he landed another major role almost immediately after, playing Deacon Ernest Fry on Amen. On July 24, 2012, his nurse found him dead in his El Paso home. Lung cancer had quietly ravaged his body. He was 74. Before power pop became a footnote in music history, Eric Carmen and the Raspberries were writing the book on it. Go All the Way wasn't just a catchy tune. It was a perfectly constructed pop-rock masterpiece, all hooks and harmonies and infectious energy. Carmen's voice soared over those melodies like he was born to sing them. When the Raspberries disbanded, he reinvented himself as a soft rock balladeer. And All by Myself, became the kind of song that defined a generation's heartbreak. Decades later, Hungry Eyes proved he still had it. But by March 2024, Eric Carmen had quietly slipped away in his sleep. His wife announced it days later. He was 74, and the world barely noticed that one of pop's greatest melodists had left the building. Before Screech, before Steve Urkel, there was Arnold Horshack, the nerdy, enthusiastic kid who raised his hand in class while shouting,
Oh, 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 oh.
Ron Palillo created a template for the lovable weirdo that television would mine for decades. Welcome Back, Kotter was a vehicle for Gabe Kaplan, but Palillo stole every scene he was in. He was endearing, awkward, and utterly unforgettable. After the show ended, Palillo worked steadily in voice acting and television, building a quiet, respectable career. He moved to Florida to be near family and to work in theater, pursuing his passion away from the spotlight. In August 2012, his agent announced that Palillo had suffered a heart attack near his home in Palm Beach Gardens. He was 63. The man who had made millions laugh as a teenager was gone, and the headlines barely registered his passing. Linda Lavin was a Broadway star before television knew what to do with her. She brought legitimacy and artistry to the small screen, first as Detective Janice Wentworth on Barney Miller, then as the lead of her own series, Alice, where she played a divorced mother waiting tables in a Phoenix diner. It was a role tailor-made for her talent, and she made it sing. For 9 years, Alice ran, and Lavin proved she could carry a show. She returned to Broadway, guest starred on everything, and took lead roles in short-lived projects that never quite found their audience. But she kept working, kept creating, right up until the end. She was in production on a Hulu sitcom when lung cancer caught up with her. On December 29, 2024, at 87, her heart simply stopped. Lavin had spent her entire life in the theater and on television, and she died still working, still believing in the craft. There was nothing subtle about Meatloaf. His voice was a sledgehammer, his presence was volcanic, and his ambition was boundless. He brought rock opera to the masses with Bat Out of Hell, an album that sold 14 million copies and spawned Paradise by the Dashboard Light, a song so elaborate and so perfectly executed that it became a rock and roll institution. He acted in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, he sang like a man possessed, and he lived like someone who refused to be ordinary. Then came the comeback. I'd do anything for love, but I won't do that, in 1993, proving he was still a force. But his body had been fighting him for years, irregular heartbeat, asthma, and then COVID-19 in early 2022. On January 20th, 2022 at 74, Meatloaf's engine finally gave out. The world mourned, but many had already forgotten he was still around. Bill Saluga was a catchphrase comedian in an era when catchphrase comedians could become household names. You can call me Ray and you can call me Jay, but you don't have to call me Johnson.
Call me Ray, or you can call me Jay.
The drawling, cigar-chomping Raymond J. Johnson Jr. was everywhere in the late 1970s. Game shows, talk shows, variety shows, commercials. Saluga was the face of a specific brand of comedy that dominated that decade. He founded the influential Ace Trucking Company improv troupe. He had dozens of acting credits, but he was forever defined by that one character. After decades of performing, Saluga spent 8 months hospitalized for undisclosed medical issues. He moved into hospice care and died on March 28, 2023. The media didn't find out until May. He was 85. By then, the world had moved on, and the man who had once been inescapable had become a footnote, a punchline on The Simpsons that nobody quite understood anymore. At 7 feet tall, Bill Walton didn't just play basketball. He transcended it. He won national championships at UCLA, was drafted first overall by the Portland Trail Blazers in 1974, and led them to their first championship. A year later, he was the NBA's most valuable player. His basketball IQ was off the charts, his skill was undeniable, and his presence on the court was transformative. Injuries slowed him down in the 1980s, but he made a comeback with the Boston Celtics, winning another title and 6th Man of the Year. He was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, included on the NBA's 75th anniversary squad, and became an Emmy Award-winning commentator, whose wordy, wise monologues were as legendary as his playing. But Walton kept a secret. He'd been living with colon cancer for years. He never told anyone. On May 27, 2024, at 71, the cancer finally claimed him. The basketball world mourned, but the general public barely noticed that one of the greatest players and commentators of all time had quietly passed away. Martin Mull was an artist in the truest sense, a performance artist, an experimental comedian, a musician, an actor. He wasn't trying to fit into any category, he was creating his own. With his band Martin Mull and his fabulous furniture, he released albums of smart, funny music mixed with stand-up and spoken word. In 1976, he appeared on Mary Hartman, a soap opera parody, playing a character who dies in a comically brutal fashion. He was so good that he came back as the character's twin brother and hosted Fernwood Tonight, a late-night talk show parody. Throughout the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s, he was a prolific actor. Clue, Roseanne, Me Arrested Development, Veep, always bringing his unique sensibility to every project. On June 27, 2024, Martin Mull died at his home in Los Angeles. He was 80. His wife announced it, but the world barely paused. The innovative, irreverent artist who had been making people think and laugh for 50 years had slipped away almost unnoticed. Chuck Barris created The Gong Show, a show so deliberately bad that it became brilliant. He also created the $1.98 beauty show, The New Treasure Hunt, How's Your Mother-in-Law? All of them intentionally absurd, all of them wildly popular in the 1970s. Barris was the maestro of television chaos, the man who understood that sometimes the most entertaining thing you could do was make something ridiculous. He hosted these shows with a snarky, aloof demeanor that became his trademark. He also claimed, unconvincingly, to be a CIA hitman in his memoir, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Whether that was true or not, Barris was a force in the 1970s television. On March 21, 2017, at 87, he died at his home in Palisades Park, New York. The man who had created some of the decade's most memorable television moments passed away with minimal fanfare, a footnote in entertainment history. Willie Stargell played his entire 21-season Major League Baseball career with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the 1970s were his decade. Nobody hit more home runs than Stargell did in that 10-year span, 296 of them. He led the National League in home runs in 1971, the year he powered the Pirates to a World Series championship. In 1973, he led the league in home runs, doubles, and RBIs. He was a 6-time All-Star who closed out the decade with another World Series win in 1979. Stargell was a titan of the game, a player whose achievements would have made him a household name in any era. But by the time he died, the world had moved on. He'd been dealing with serious kidney problems in his final years. On April 9, 2001, at 61, he suffered a stroke at New Hanover Regional Medical Center in Wilmington, North Carolina. The Pirates unveiled a statue of him outside PNC Park around the same time. It was a fitting tribute to a man who had already been largely forgotten by the general public, remembered only by those who still cared about baseball history. They made us laugh, cry, and believe in something bigger, even if just for 30 minutes on a Tuesday night. But fame is fleeting. And for some of these stars, their final act came without applause, cameras, or even a headline. Which one of these stories hit you the hardest? And why do you think some celebrities fade into obscurity, while others are immortalized? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep their memories alive, together. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the stories Hollywood forgot. Thank you for watching.